Hello and welcome to another Lore You Should Know segment. I'm Greg Tito, and today I'm joined by Ari Levitch. Hi, Ari.
Hello.
On this segment, where we delve into little bits of Dungeons and Dragons lore for funsies, as well as for possible inclusion in your game, if you're including some of the material from Mythic Odysseys of Theros, which is out in stores and available digitally everywhere now, a more classically themed. Yeah, there you go. You got the books.
I'm so excited
and the
to
covers.
actually have this in my hands.
Oh, me too. Actually, I don't have one yet. Sorry. Pardon me.
I have two books. I have an abundance of
You're
books.
lousy with books. I am excited and honored to talk through some of more of the deities within Theros. And as we've alluded to in some of our segments with Adam Lee, as well as you, Ari, there is the current gods of Theros are not the ones that have been in charge or venerated by the peoples there for this entire time. There were some first gods out there.
Yeah, so the pantheon includes almost like three generations of gods, if you were to kind of characterize it that way. Mm-hmm. And the first gods, they're still in the pantheon, but at one point they were the kind of the only gods. These are the gods Klothys and Klothys. And I know Adam talked a little bit about Klothys, but I kind of want to frame a little bit about kind of the origin of the gods to in this conversation. And then we could talk a little bit more about Klothys.
Perfect.
But so as we talked about before, that one of the unique aspects of Theros as a world is this concept of Nyx, which is this kind of manifestation element, that it looks like, the night sky. It has this kind of starfield visualization, but it has this power to manifest things in reality. And before we had the gods, there were these manifestations of these kind of primal fears, and these were the Titans. And kind of alongside that came the first two gods. And Adam talked about Klothys, who's this god of mystery, this god of the unknown. And so it was this kind of manifestation, this mortal manifestation of the concept of a world that is large, or a universe that is larger than themselves, this unknown element, that there are things to discover. But alongside that, there is the god Klothys, who is the god of destiny. But Klothys also represents this kind of cosmic order, that there are things that essentially have their right place.
So does that mean almost like a predetermination, like a Calvinist kind of idea?
No, so destiny is not necessarily about predestiny or like a preordained kind of way things work, but that there is a kind of a cosmic order to things. One of the things that sets gods apart and mortals and heroic mortals, heroes, are this idea that they can kind of forge their own path, even in a cosmic sense. Whereas most people will kind of go along in this order that Klothys kind of oversees. There are individuals and entities that kind of can shirk that. One thing that kind of throws a wrench into that is part of the history of the gods. So I mentioned the Titans before as being this kind of manifestations of these destructive forces or primal fears. And those forces, those Titans, threatened to kind of overwhelm Theros early on as a world. And so Klothys and Klothys trapped and bound the Titans. And Klothys retreated to the underworld to oversee the bondage of the Titans. And she has been down there for ages, and only recently has reemerged because mortals and the pettiness of the gods themselves has kind of started to unravel these strands of destiny to a point where she kind of has to set things right. So she can be this wrathful god, even set against the other gods and mortals who have kind of upset this cosmic order.
Interesting. So I didn't realize Klothys was, a female presenting god. That's interesting. So it feels almost like a jailer to a certain extent of the Titans. Does she actively keep the Titans, freedom from them?
Yeah. And through the story that played out in the first card set of Theros, there was a satyr named Xenagos who ascended to godhood.
Mm.
And there was this whole plot to thwart Xenagos and kind of cast him out of the pantheon, which succeeded. But it was basically the last straw for Klothys. Klothys is like, you know what? Enough is enough. You gods and mortals are messing with things that are bigger than yourselves, and I'm going to reemerge from the underworld and basically leave my post at holding these titans back. And I need to set things right, kind of in the realms of the gods and mortals, and just kind of reemerge as a presence. So like where other gods will have, all sorts of shrines and rituals associated with them, Klothys is mysterious to most mortals. There are lots of mortals who don't even know Klothys exists. That kind of part of the pantheon was non-existent until recently.
Well, I was going to ask then, how does she sustain her power then? Because what we've talked about before is that, a lot of the gods are ascend to godhood or have their powers derived from people within Theros believing in them and worshiping them. And if she was a somewhat secret to many peoples, how did she still have power?
So this is an oddity about that first generation of gods, that neither Klothys nor Klothys actually require the direct worship of mortals, because they're manifestations of these kind of earlier, almost like not fears in the way that titans are, and not kind of social concepts the way the kind of more recent gods are, but these are kind of more cosmic truths that were essentially given form. So you have this god of mystery and this god of cosmic order that are kind of on opposite sides of almost like a mortal's wonder, right? Like what is this universe about? What are the components in this universe? And they exist beyond kind of a mortal's acknowledgement of so they're interesting in that way. I mean,
interesting. So almost like people just questioning their reality was enough to give power to the god of mystery. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. And just even the fact that these gods have an immense amount of power. I mean, Klothys, for example, like putting Klothys aside for a moment, Klothys had the power to kind of shut the gods off from the mortals in this thing called the silence. And the fact that one of these kind of first gods has this power even over the other gods makes the other gods nervous and probably a little uncomfortable with that. But Klothys and Klothys don't have the ambitions of these kind of what they would probably see as these immature petty gods. And so, they exist kind of apart from the rest of the pantheon.
Okay. So how could dungeon masters use this, these ideas, these bigger than life ideas, in more practical gameplay?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of space to play with Klothys as an entity in terms of Klothys emerging from the underworld into a Theros that has changed, and seeing all the things like civilization emerge. Klothys is probably a little uncomfortable with this idea of mortals trying to wrest control of the cosmos themselves, right? That they could shape their destiny in their own way is probably a little off-putting to Klothys. So you can imagine Klothys as an antagonistic figure in that way. But at the same time, Klothys can also be a patron of setting things right. That there is things that, I can imagine if you're using aberrations as kind of a major antagonist in your campaign, that Klothys would be, that an aberration would be antithetical to everything that Klothys stands for. This idea that this is a twisting of reality in creating these types of monsters. So I think there's a lot of place to, and I think there's an exciting thing to do to play with. Imagine discovering kind of an old ancient shrine dedicated to Klothys that was forgotten for ages and ages and ages, or finding a hermit that might not even know that that they do worship Klothys or follow Klothys in some way. They might not be entirely aware of the fact that their rituals are something that Klothys would admire or appreciate. You can tap into though Titans aren't in the book because they are. I don't even know what kind of. I don't even know if our CR system can accommodate what a Titan can do. But you can imagine this cosmic force of a Titan and the threat of a Titan coming or reemerging into the world, as because Klothys left the underworld, as something that might drive your entire campaign.
Oh, okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, right. Because she left her post to handle what's happening with the mortals. While you're handling that, then this major cosmic threat is unleashed because of that, and you could almost deal with a patron of Klothys, full of remorse.
That's right.
Like, I tried to set this right, but I actually made things worse, and I need mortals' help now to
the hubris of a
back.
god is a fun concept to play with too. Like that is something interesting.
Yeah.
You could even play with this idea. So one thing I didn't mention was that Klothys has this impossibly long hair, and that the strands of her hair are woven into the fabric of destiny itself.
Oh.
So you can imagine, you can even play with this kind of manifestation of like a literal strand of her hair that maybe has come loose from the fabric of destiny, and now you have to set that, or you have to, reintegrate whatever that quest means. I don't know, but there are things you could do. Imagine like stumbling upon that, or something tangled up in that. You could play with that as well.
Could there also be player characters that are trying to rewrite their destiny, that might want to, subvert the strands of her hair, or steal them and then use them to further their own goals?
Absolutely, I think that's a great way to realize that concept, because heroes on Theros are set apart from other mortals, and that they do kind of have a greater degree of control over their destiny. And what does that mean when they come in contact with Klothys or Klothys's agents or followers, or if they do want to wrest control of that strand, whatever that means. Like, you get to play with that as a DM and kind of write that part of the myth, which I think is exciting.
I love the idea of playing with destiny, since it seems wrapped up in the heroes and storytelling that is going on in Theros, kind of on the mortal plane, but having, gods and deities be affected by it is a wonderful thing. Do you think that introducing some of this stuff in the early levels is okay? And how would you go about doing that? Because I feel like a lot of what we're talking about is high level play, right? Like being able to deal with these greater cosmic things. How do we bring that back to, say, a third level character?
I think you could do that in terms of you might get Klothys's attention. Let's say you thwart some kind of low level baddie, and you are approached by an emissary of Klothys who basically commends you for setting things right. That what was about to transpire was against the cosmic order. And it's almost like you could play them like, if you are a Marvel fan, like the Watcher. Uatu, right? Who kind of is this observer of the universe, who tries not to get really involved, but will kind of push heroes in the right direction for the kind of to set things right according to kind of a cosmic order. And I think in a similar way, you could play with Klothys's emissaries that way. Klothys reemerging into the mortal realm means that mortals become aware of her, that there is this sense that she's not this absentee god anymore. And so you get to play with that too, and kind of the ripple effects of what that means for the pantheon and their followers. And so you can have this kind of, you could start your campaign with the premise being Klothys has reemerged from the underworld onto the mortal realm. Cool, that's your premise. What does that mean? What are the ramifications of all of that? What is her first action as she comes back? And I think that's something that could play out across levels of play. And I think that whether you could set the heroes as some of her first champions, which could be a fun thing. And she doesn't care what other gods they worship. It doesn't matter as long as they serve this greater function, which is kind of interesting.
That is cool. You mentioned her hair. What other aspects of her physical appearance can you describe?
So-
not just in her looks, but also in what kind of weapons or artifacts or anything that she might be associated with.
Yeah, she's got this cool like spear-like weapon that is almost like a shaped like a spindle. So you have this kind of
Ooh.
weaving motif going through her. If I could do show and tell, is that okay? Can I? Show a
Yeah,
page?
sure.
All right.
We can say what number of page it is, so people who are listening can have a visual.
So on page 59, you will see the visual of Klothys.
Ooh.
Her spear is kinda cut off.
she's got a blindfold.
Yeah, that's actually her hair that crosses over her eyes, and she has 6 horns that kind of curl around her head as well.
What's the significance of the strands of destiny covering her eyes?
I trying to remember now. It's the idea that I don't. If I had to speculate, I could be wrong. Somebody's going to comment and be like, "You're totally wrong." Ari. Like, okay, now this would be reverse engineering.
You should know all this.
Yeah, this would be reverse engineering. So the idea that she's not through her own will shaping these things, that she is overseeing this cosmic order that is not by her own will.
So it's similar to justice is blind kind of idea.
Yeah.
That like
it's playing in that space.
Right. Yeah. All right. I love that. And then what are the horns?
I apologize, Magic Creative Team, if I totally bungled that. So.
We'll fix it in post. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's fine. They can change theirs.
And that's the whole point about this is how you would do it as dungeon master in Theros. Like that's the interpretation.
All of these are tools you get to play with and mess with and just have fun with.
Exactly. So the final question here, what's the significance of the horns? Because I don't think I know of a creature that would have 6 horns. Is it just that it looks cool, or does that have more significance?
I don't know if it has any significance to her role or anything like that. In kind of looking at the way Magic would do their creative, this is me speculating because I was not. Klothys was created for during the latest set of Theros, so I was not on the Magic team anymore. But the colors she occupies in the Magic colors, which are white, blue, black, red, green. She's a red-green god, so she has those 2 colors on her card. So her visuals still have to read as red-green, and red-green oftentimes deals with beasts and monsters and things like that. And so her visuals still have to cue as a red-green entity.
Does she have any? This is just another theory, but does she have any connection to the satyrs?
Not explicitly. Not like the way Xenagos was a satyr who ascended to godhood.
Okay. I wonder. I mean, as a dungeon master, I'm looking at that and being like, maybe she was the progenitor of that.
Those are all things you get to play with, which I think is awesome. Like there is so much in here that talks about the gods and their motivations and things like that, but there's a lot of space to say it, to write your own myths. There is absolutely that thing.
I like that. And it's one of the most exciting parts about Mythic Odysseys of Theros and how it feels different from other Dungeons & Dragons out there. And I hope people are jumping into campaigns or using the parts of this book for their homebrew campaigns right now. And if you are interested in any of this, go to your local game store and try to get the alternate copy because it looks awesome.
I'm going to hold that up again because it's amazing.
Yes, it is. It's one of my favorites for sure. I want to go there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ari, for talking through Klothys and her role within the pantheon of Theros. How can people perhaps get in touch with you if they have follow-up questions or if they just want to know more about the work you're doing?
I am on Twitter, though I am not the most active person, so be patient with me. But I am at Ari Levitch.
Excellent. Great. Well, thanks, Ari, and we'll be back with some more fun segments next week.
Great. Bye, all.